All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the 64th EOF Implementers Call. It is the 8th of January, on the Western Hemisphere at least. Our agenda, testing, client updates, compiler updates, and then spec updates. Mostly dealing with some things we were finishing with in December. Got some open questions there. So first, testing update. Do we have Mario on the call? Yes, we do.
Yep. Yep, here I am. Not that much anyway, to update from testing. There's a couple of PRs open. There's one that needs the attention from someone. That is not me because I already approved. But if you guys could take a look and yeah, this is the one. If you guys can take a look, there's an open discussion on that has to be resolved. And I think it's very simple. And I think it's already resolved, but just to confirm. And I can
Okay.
merge that today. Yeah,
All right, yeah. I'll get the conclusion on that. Is it the bit about the preamble code? Is it this
exactly. Yeah.
discussion?
It seemed
Yeah.
fine to me. I mean, it sounds reasonable, so I don't have any objections. But if there's
Okay.
anything else to discuss, yeah.
Well, I wrote it, so clearly I'm okay with it. So maybe we should get Peter to approve it and close it,
Yeah,
and then we
exactly.
can move on
Okay.
with it. Cool. Um, Fuzzing. I ran fuzzing for a week solid. Apart from a few bugs that were found, it ran clean for like a whole week. I didn't have Nethermind because Nethermind has an issue with output. I had to run it in the mode that had no tracing output. Because the tracers have subtle differences and it couldn't diff the traces. It was only testing the end state. So I needed to take Nethermind out of it, but I've read Nethermind for a long time as well. But this includes Ref, EVM1, Besu, and Geth. So from the fuzzing strategies that I have, which include introducing new random opcodes, things look pretty well. And I'm learning some of the boundaries, and I think this is a good sign, the boundaries of the testing framework. For example, EVM1 requires EXP mod precompile that doesn't get turned on by default, so I had to figure that out. And I found a bug in Besu that resulted in a new PR, one of the new ghost tests, before we did the clean run. And a bunch of these are mostly boundary testing between the various versions. I haven't pushed up my new findings on here, but it's uncovering some other edge cases that are probably general EVM issues, like how do you handle calling an account that has max UNT 256 ether? Do you roll over and lose the ether, or do you fail? Not a real world situation. That's not going to happen on mainnet, but it should be clearly defined. So there's going to be some interesting things falling out of this. Um, cool. Anyone else have any comments on testing before we move on to client updates? Okay. So
Just checking the state of the PRs. I think everything is merged except the last one. But yeah.
yep, yeah,
Mhm.
cool. Yeah, that's the one where we had to do the preamble test case. The the preamble code and the gas testing. Okay. So share this link.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
I'll go ahead and put this, add that to my notes. Okay. Next is client updates. Um, I'll just start with a go around. Does any client have anything they need to talk about or any information about their client that's changed over Christmas? Probably not. Um, so basically nothing to update.
Nope.
Okay. Not seeing Ref on. Um, Not seeing Geth on either. EVM1, anything to update?
Nope.
And Nethermind, any updates there?
Needs to do a bit of work to bring our branch up to date with with Pectra, but otherwise, okay.
Okay. And that's my next main point. We need to make sure we rebase off of Pectra 5. And that's to get us ready for the first real EOF testnet. There is some debate whether it's going to be called EOF DevNet 0 or Osaka DevNet 0, and that's probably a question that needs to be answered in the Alcor Devs call. But I think, yeah, Nethermind, that would be good. I know Geth will need to rebase theirs. Bases should be good. I don't expect anything different from them. And EVM1, you're ready to run off of Pectra 5? That would be an Aragon V3.
No, and
Oh, not yet.
I think.
Okay. To run the DevNet, we need at least 3. So I could get Geth up probably here in the next week. And Reth is the last wild card. I don't know if Reth runs off of Pectra 5 yet either. Let's see. Okay. Next agenda item. Spec and other issues. We've got a Solidity update here, left by Radlov. So basically, the update is that the Solidity support is going fine. It's about on schedule. He gave a list of everything that needs to be implemented. Over here, not over here, over here. So here's a hit list, basically a punch list of all the random things that need to be implemented and fixed for the final result for it. So if you're interested in reading about this, you can read all the details on it. We don't have Charles on, so no Viper news. Any other compilers?
Just to know that I think this is the list for things that need to be done before EOF support in Solidity is not experimental anymore. So that's why it's so long, I guess. But I think from what Radek has posted, it is functional, so it can compile.
Okay.
EOF.
Now, this is going to transition to a spec. Remember we had, in November, we had a list of small breaking changes we wanted to do. I guess one question would be, how would those impact EOF, the Solidity support? Things like reordering some of the opcodes.
I mean, I think Radek at one point commented on most of these changes, and I mean, he was aware, I guess.
Okay.
And I don't think he panicked in any case that it's going to be very impactful. Maybe this hashing change would be the one that could be more. If we go, if we pick one of the more involved options, I guess.
Right. Okay.
And argument order, not the name of the opcode, not impactful. Data section index, not impactful. No, I don't think those would be big changes.
Okay. Those won't be too hard. Cool. Because we're giving how we want to do that. Because if we want to ship Osaka 0, well, we would have shipped in Pectra. And then we do Osaka 1 or DevNet or EOF DevNet 1 with the new slate of changes, then that would change which EOF's compatible, which Solidity version we would use. And I would think we would want to get all these changes done before we flip the experimental flag off of Solidity. So that's probably how we would want to run that.
My gut feel tells me that the experimental flag on Solidity is gonna get removed much later than any definite. That's my gut feel. But I don't want to speak for the team.
I think generally that will only be removed once it goes live on mainnet.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Not even testnet, mainnet?
Yeah, exactly. That would be my gut feeling.
Okay.
Hmm.
Cool. Any other things we should talk about for the compilers before we move on to spec issues?
There's the issue of the sort of syntax for the exchange opcode. I don't know that there's any consensus really. I still consider it important.
Okay. This would be in their UL section.
I mean, this is not just for Solidity. It's any
Right.
language, assembler, disassembler.
Do we want to spend time on it or just mention it needs to be fixed and work on it in the forums?
Not sure. I mean, I wrote a document about it. I would invite people to read if they haven't. I don't know if others agree with me that this is important. I'm just concerned that we will have like off by one slightly different syntax all over the place, and it's gonna be very confusing.
Right.
But maybe just a quick
Because
temperature check. Do people consider this important or entirely unimportant?
I think it's important. Long term, maybe short term as well. Right.
okay.
Like I guess this is short term important for you because you're writing the assembler right now.
I think it's important to have a buy-in on whatever is the syntax, because if one language changes it, that can cause like a lot of issues. And if one person feels extremely strongly about it and makes that change in that one language, and if that gets picked up, then we do have a trouble on our hands.
So how's that going to
Yeah.
work with swap 1 and swap 2? Just a sec. There is a swap 1 instruction, or is there not?
Yes, there is. Like the
There is
legacy.
a swap. Yeah, there is a legacy 90 swap 1. So the question is, when we do the immediate swaps, do we stick with swap 1 means n+1, or do we go back and say that swap is, I mean, it leaks over to swap as well.
Yeah, to me, changing the syntax of swap is crazy. It's like a lost cause.
Yes.
I would just focus on exchange. And if we want to, I mean, to me, even having swap and swap n have the number mean a different thing is crazy. I would do it like a different name, but we're not at the point where we'll change any opcode names. So
There's one cautionary tale here is the return data copy. It was one of these examples where people tried to change the semantics to something they felt like is more reasonable and hoped that the rest of the system would move towards that. It never did. And return data copy was this one exception which behaves differently than the rest. And now we have changed that, or wanted to change it with EOF. So I guess that's maybe something to look at if you're trying to do this. We're trying to do the new instruction properly because we think that's the proper way it should be. But if it becomes inconsistent with the rest, we may have like another return data copy situation down the line.
But it is about the assembler syntax.
It is, but it's semantics. People need to be aware of it. And the whole idea why return data copy wasn't zero padding, because a lot of people felt like there was like a bad design and they wanted to fix that. And it ended up being, this single one exception. And you can apply the same logic to the numbering. If these other instructions behave differently, and then this one follows a very different logic, then maybe it will end up in a similar position down the line.
Well, the thing I think is that dupe and swap already are inconsistent between them.
Exactly.
So yeah, so it's not like we can just say exchange should do the same. We have to choose between one and or the other. I would just propose to go with the approach I called exact in my document, but only for the exchange opcode. And maybe people can think about that. And if we agree, we just push for that.
Wait, so exact for exchange and what for dupe and swappen?
Oh, traditional.
Traditional.
But that one I get is maybe more controversial. I don't know.
I mean,
That would be my final proposal, just to have like something concrete to go forward on.
I mean, from usability and Solidity assembly, I think exact is good, and we let Solidity do the magic of encoding it. Because as far as opcode encodings, EVM is quite straightforward. You go to other systems like ePBS and eBPF, and it gets quite obtuse. So having assemblers do the magic is not out of line. But I still wonder if there should be a way to escape into literal with syntax.
Yes, I mean that's nice, but I don't know if it needs to be standardized, or do
Right.
you
The
feel that it
syntax
needs to be
should,
standardized?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
At that
the
point,
syntax can be customizable. Everyone does exact, and if they want to do the escape, they can have an assembly-specific escape into verbatim.
right. And then you can have like numeral symbol hashtag X could mean different things in different assemblers. At that point, we don't care.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we should probably all read this and come back with a stronger opinion in 2 weeks. And I think if we set this in Solidity, it'll be, the first assembler out there. It'll be easier to get the others to follow on. So I think it's whatever we decide should be what's reflected in Solidity, unless the Solidity team's got a stronger opinion.
yeah, I mean, and also we can, because East also has like sort of assembler or DSL, and also the specs kind of hint on what the syntax could be. So if we have a reasonable starting point, then we can also apply that approach there, and hope that other assemblers will play along.
And I think it is actually doing, East is doing the exact syntax. Exchange 2.3 becomes E800. So
Yeah, I
there's
think
already one vote in favor of it. Okay. All right. Any other compiler assembly notation issues before we move on to spec? All right, let's move on to spec. First spec item is the EOF metadata section. Was there any follow-up on that EIP?
We hope to do an EVM1 like spike implementation in EVM1 and also some example tests in East for this, but that we didn't have the capacity to. This is 7834. If I recall correctly. Yep. Well, no. There it is.
And did this include changing the data section to section FF?
Um,
Or that's the smallest of
we can
improvements?
treat them orthogonally, I think.
Okay. All right. So the next, any last call on metadata? Okay. Next one is EOF create, TX create hashing. And there was a doc written up about this.
Yeah, so to comment on this doc, I only have been able to prepare this today, so maybe it's best to discuss it on the next call when everybody has had the chance to familiarize themselves with. Basically, it tries to sort of summarize some options and some potential, ways we can tackle this and organize them into those scenarios that we're looking at right now, and then makes a sort of an attempt to compare them in terms of what they offer and how problematic they are. So I invite everyone to take a look at this document, comment, and unless anyone has any quick feedback right now, we can postpone the discussion till the next call.
And this document covers both the EOF create hashing and the question about deterministic deployments?
Yes. I decided to combine them because from this thread that we have had on GitHub, it seems to me like they are kind of interconnected. I mean, it became apparent that the schemes that we have been discussing for EOF create do not solve the deterministic, like all this family of different kinds of deployments that are being used right now. So maybe it's worth to take a step back and try to look at it from a broader perspective.
So for TX create, this is going to be my comment. Is there a reason why we're not including the TX hash that comes in as part of the app code as part of the hash?
The TX hash, sorry?
So TX create, you need to reference something in the transaction. And I think it's either a linear index or a hash of whatever is in there already.
So you mean in a container hash?
Right, yeah, in the transaction object. So a init container hash.
Yeah,
Is there thought of putting a init container hash into the TX create hash, but not the EOF create hash?
Wait. So the most recent design of TX create, I think it included the init container hash.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this can be also considered as one of the possible solutions and scenarios here, but there has been a proposal to leave this out because it can be included into the salt by the factory code. And
Okay, so it becomes a factory responsibility.
yeah, I mean, if there's a compelling reason to have this, then we can of course discuss this. But for the sake of not having too many options, those schemes for TX create and EOF create here for TX create. Sorry, they don't include the init container hash.
Okay. Because over Christmas, in the Discord, that kind of leaks into the next thing I wanted to talk about for it, which is the proposed contracts. So if we know that we need to put the TX hash in it, then we just need to do some more math on the salt here. My pitch of the deterministic deployment factories presumes that the hash is in the salt, and it wouldn't be too hard just to write it to include the hash into the salt, which would just mean, another Kachak inside of here, which isn't too bad. We could check with the salt to make sure we don't get collisions. Okay.
Well, it is not mentioned in the document, I think, but if we leave the init container hash out, then maybe we can save on the hashing cost, which is included in the deployment cost. At least for EOF create, that is the case. For TX create, maybe.
Well, it would just be hashing over 64 bytes, 32 for the salt and 32 for the code hash. I'm calling it code hash here. So it wouldn't be, it would still be a full Kachak round, but it wouldn't be over a large amount of data. And I think that's really what burns us at runtime is hashing over the entire contract. And that would be taken care of in the transaction processing with the code hash.
Hold on. For TX create, you need the code hash anyway. It is provided in the call data. So you do not need to rehash this.
Don't you end up with all sorts of weird patterns by devs to try and avoid the init code hash affecting the contract address? So maybe it's better not to include it.
I mean, yes. And this document, I don't think it goes into detail on this, but it is being discussed in an issue that is linked from the document, and this big issue. So one of the reasons of including as little as possible in the hashing schemes there is to leave the choice of what is affecting the address or not up to the application layer.
Right. So we would provide a set of standard contracts. You don't like it, you do it yourself, which is just address plus nodes. If you don't want the code hash, you can write your own deployment factory.
Yes, and there's many other elements that the schemes either want left out or included, like the input or the nonce, or there's one thing more. I don't remember. Oh yeah, the init code hash, the input and the nonce, and I think there's use cases for including or excluding all of these.
Right, because in this default version, I don't include the init data. You don't have any init data that you can pass in, and some people might say, well, I want to do that. So that's just basically, haggling over what the defaults are going to be, and then it gives them freedom to change it.
Yes. I mean, of course, it puts the burden of providing right defaults on probably the compiler. And this goes more for EOF create, of course.
Right.
Because they need to handle new contract something.
Oh yeah, EOF create would need to worry about it.
Yes. So and this also is discussed in this thread, and I tried to capture it in the comparison, but all feedback is very welcome on this.
I mean, there could be. I mean, this is like practically an open Zeppelin library. You could have any mix and match copy you want. You just bring it into your system, and there's recommended defaults. It gets deep pretty quick. I mean, you're giving them the power to do it. Yeah, then we need to worry about best practices.
So yes, please take a look at the doc, and also I encourage everyone from the application layer and compilers teams, which I think showed up on the previous call, to take a look and provide feedback.
Okay. Anyone else have opinions? Concerns, support?
I haven't read the document yet. I'll have some thoughts when I do that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Kind of addressed pre-ERC. And the last two items, getting back to work and mountains of paperwork that I've been doing this week. I haven't had time to enumerate these. But the last two questions are starting to work on the Osaka 1 spec changes, and that's the smaller list that we got together. Probably should have enumerated that. I didn't think we'd have this much time left after all the stuff before this, after the last meeting. And then the temperature check on timeline. So maybe I'll start with the temperature check, and then we can loop back onto the minor changes. What are people's high-level wish lists for when does this get activated on mainnet? Without concerning yourself with the rest of the chain, and then concerning yourself with the rest of the chain. Do we want to ship it this year? Ship it next year? This year with TX Create? Next year with TX Create?
EOF?
What are people's? EOF, yeah.
When we are comfortable
When we're
with the
comfortable.
design. Yeah, when the final, for me, it would be like when
Okay.
there are no more deal breakers.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that would be this year. Well, I
Mhm.
mean, it's not going to be shipped on mainnet this year. It's no chance, but
2025?
yes. I don't think there'll be another hard fork after Spectra, right?
Yeah, because Spectra is looking at Q2 right now. But if we could pull off a small fork with just EOF, would people be on board for rushing that, or do we want to just fully accept that we're going to be in Q1 of 26?
I'd accept that. I mean, I think that would be ideal.
Generally,
Um,
small forks, yeah.
I mean, if we could couple it with PeerDAS, that'd be great. But if that's gonna lag it, I think it would be better to.
Well, I think it also
You know,
depends on how much pure DAS is going to lag.
Yeah, and then we could, it's easier to get in without too much, without the fork bloating. Whereas if it's going to be next year, then it's going to be a large fork.
Yeah. Okay. So nobody with strong opinions, because this is certainly going to be a discussion in ATD sometime in January. Just want to see where people's opinions are on this. Yeah, there's nobody's got a strong opinion of when they want to ship Osaka anyway. It sounds like outside of EOF or inside of EOF. So we're gonna see how it goes about, I guess. All right. And Peter, did you have a link to the list of the small items that were enumerated?
Yes,
You
just
still have that?
a second. Okay. You mean this one?
Mm-hmm.
Dana, if we have a second, could we elaborate a little bit on why we think it's best to tie with PeerDAS? I think it would be nice to tie it with PeerDAS, but I don't know that I understand the compelling association between the two.
To fork the CL and the L at the same time rather than diverge.
Okay.
But I mean, it depends. If we're ready to go and PeerDAS is going to be, more months, then it's worth probably going ahead.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but these features aren't as tied together as, like, say, the first Dencun, where withdrawals and blobs, where they absolutely had to be synchronous changes.
That's right.
Okay. So the punch list. See if there's anything in here that so max stack height. This would involve renumbering, basically some math. Instead of doing max height, you do max height minus your input. This would impact the EOF format. It would affect validation. It would impact fuzzing as well, but that can be dealt with. EOF create is reordering the stack, and I would assume TX create too. I think TX create is spec would need some reordering. We haven't done TX create yet. This is
Yeah, it probably is affected by the same issue.
EOF create. This is actually a separate issue that's been escalated because it's pretty big.
Yeah, we can put this actually off this list. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe not now.
That's fine. And return code. Oh, just changing a name. This does affect the compiler. That's a small one. That would affect Solidity. And then finally, change the data section from 04 to FF, and probably retire 04. Frangio.
Yeah, I just realized here we are also missing the contract type opcode.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yes, we are. It was like a more big. It is not on the list because it was bigger. That's the main reason.
But is it also considered for EOF v1? I mean, for the
I
hard
think so.
fork.
I think so. I think we still wanted to sort of gather the arguments for not including it in EOF v1, but not done yet.
And I'm just remembering from the R&D session, it seemed like everyone who wasn't a frequent attender of the calls that was in the EOF section, they were warm to the idea of making it be a contract type, where 0 would be legacy, and the different values would have different things. 1 would be EOF contract, 2 would be delegate call. So not delegate call, a delegate contract, so they could identify it.
Oh yeah, and also it was not on this list, and it's sort of not comparable to those small updates because it has the advantage of being possible to introduce later.
Right. Account type, I think, is what it was. And there's an EIP. I'd have to search for it. But that is a must ship as well.
7761, I think.
Yes, something like that.
And I think this one is just has code right now, but I think from other developers, other core devs, there's support for getting it to account type, which would solve most of the EXT code problems, but not like EXT code copy and EXT data copy. But it's pretty established that if this isn't in there, people would just create a set of standard redirect contracts to get to the opcode and return it as data. So, yes, it's a should have, not a must have, I think is what I would phrase it.
Which one is the should have?
7761. We should have it, but it's not a must have like anything that would require a breaking change, because we could introduce it later if we get it wrong, but it's better to get it right. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, so this is one of the things I disagree on. Just from the application layer, I see it as a must-have.
Okay. It's a deal breaker till it's in. Probably how you would view it.
That is my position, but
I think that's fair.
And I'm
Well,
fine
I
with
mean,
account type. I
but-
think it does address most issues. Sorry.
But the main issue is with the ERC 721 contracts, correct?
So there's two things motivating it. The 721, because they specify, I mean, they specify you're supposed to check code size, but really what we want to make sure is that it's a contract that accepts a call versus an EOA, and they're using code size as a proxy for EOA. I think the Open Zeppelin folks were coming in, and they were concerned. They wanted to make a new type of, maybe not make a new type, but they wanted to make sure that their proxy contracts, if their proxy contract was an EOF compiled contract, they wanted to make sure that they had the code in there to prevent you from accidentally setting a legacy contract to the delegate and locking it in. So they would check the account type before they accept the delegate and lock it in. And the argument there was you just do a test call. But if we have to have it for 721s, then we may as well leverage it for the deploy contract, because there's, you know, it's almost all win, no loss to extend it there, I think is the argument there.
Yeah, I mean, I regret that I haven't had yet the capacity to write this down, but the argument was that I mean, that the ERC 721 tokens could, if they want to leverage EOF, they could, I guess, deviate from the standard, or, you know, upgrade the standard and use a newer one, where this requirement is not that necessary. But I don't want to jump the gun without thinking this through properly and writing it down.
I think the issue is like
the argument was that this ERC 165 would be a pretty good approximation of what the hash code is accomplishing.
I mean,
yeah, that involves calling it though, and who knows what traps they have.
I don't think that's viable, but I wouldn't mind seeing the proposal and evaluating it.
Yeah, it was hand waved on Discord, I think. That was around the time when we were discussing the AA implications of this, but
that would
yeah,
also trigger the fallback method, wouldn't it?
If I recall correctly, the only, like, the contracts that would be problematic, or maybe put it differently, the ERC 721 recipients that would be problematic would be contracts that cannot accept those tokens, and they have they do not have a throwing fallback function, and they do not support ERC 165, or do not, you know, do some non-standard stuff with pretend they do, but they do not. But again, my memory is not accurate on this.
Yeah. But my understanding of like the NFT storage and NFT community, the safe send with make the contract checking is a must-have. So if we don't have some sort of account type checking facility, and if it would, once it's need to be sufficient, I don't know if they'd accept it, then we would not ever have EOF NFTs. And I'm presenting that as a bad thing, to be clear.
Yep.
Okay. I think that's a summary of the issues we need to work on. I guess for the next meeting, we should review the hashing document. We should get an update to the account type EIP. That is, I'm on there, so I can update that. And what else do we need? And implementation on the metadata and getting us up to, I think the top thing we need to work on though is getting stuff up on Pectra 5 so we can get the DevNet momentum started.
Yeah.
And review the exchange. Okay. Any other questions or comments for this call? First call of the year? All right. If not, this is going to be an exciting year. I think it's the year we get stuff. If not shipped, it's going to be so far down the pike that it can't be stopped. So, yep, I'd like to thank everyone for all the time and effort they put into this. Thanks.